Hello, it's week 26 of season 5 of the Andy Griffith Show. This week's episode title is Opie's Newspaper. Barney, Opie starts turning up his own town newspaper and calling it the Nader Sun. He's doing it together with a friend of his who just got a printing machine for his birthday. And so Opie comes in the courthouse and he sells a copy of the first issue to his pa. And he says sales are slow so far. So then he leaves to go down to Foley's Market to see if he can sell any down there. Meanwhile, I come in the courthouse from getting a haircut, and I tell Andy I'm sorry it took so long. But Floyd was gadding with Fred Henry, and Andy wants to know what Fred had to say, and I say I don't know. He went on and on about the Widow Saunders or something. Tell you the truth, I was reading a geographic, and I didn't pay a lot of attention to him. But then Andy gets you to repeat all these details of what Fred said about a guy that the Widow Saunders has been seeing, which you wouldn't know if you really had just been reading the geographic and not paying attention. And then Andy shows me Opie's newspaper, and I read it and I say, oh, that's cute. It really is. That's darn cute. Their own newspaper. And then Opie comes back in and says the taters are still not selling. And I say, Nady, you're not getting the right kind of copy. And he says, oh, you know about taters, Darny? And I say, oh, yeah. In Central High School, I had my own sports column. Tickets and splashes from floor and pool. You want to increase your circulation, right? Well, you gotta widen your scope. You gotta dolt your readers with every human interest story about every John Doe from here to Timbuktu. So Opie says thanks, and he leaves. And Andy says he don't remember a sports column in high school by that name. And I say, well, it was in just that once. It was way ahead of its time. It was too controversial. So Opie and his friend look at the Mayberry Gazette, which is the local paper, and find the gossip column titled Mayberry After Midnight. And they both realize that the adults in both of their households always read that first. So with that information and with your advice, they start eavesdropping on folks to get some good local gossip. Yeah, they overhear Aunt Dee talking on the phone about Mrs. Foster's chicken a la king tasting like wallpaper taste, and about her silver service actually being plate. And Andy and Jed saying that the preacher's sermons can be long and dry as dust. And they hear me and Aunt Dee talking about Harold Grigsby's new wife. She's young enough to be his daughter, and she's after his money from the sawmill that he owns, and she's a blonde right out of the bottle. So the next day, Opie brings around copies of his second issue to us at Andy's breakfast table. He says they're free samples, and we read all these things that we said yesterday in print. And I say, what are we going to do? Now, why would he put things like this in the paper? And Andy says he guesses Opie is trying to widen his scope like I suggested. So we all go out to get all the taters back. And Aunt Bee has to accept an invitation from the chicken a la king lady. And you get yelled at by Mr. Grigsby when he thinks you're coming over to try to see his new wife. And Andy has to agree to teach Sunday school for a whole month because the preacher had already read his copy and the comment about the sermons. And Andy tells the boys to write nice things about folks instead of mean ones. And they say when we did that, nobody wanted to buy the tater. And Andy says he don't care. Stop it. No more writing about grown-ups. So we get back as many copies as we can, and by 8:30 that night, we still hadn't heard anything. So we figured we got away with it, except for the Sunday school and the chicken a la king dinner. And Aunt Bee says this should teach us to be a better example to Opie and not to talk about folks. And then Opie comes to tell us good night and tells us there was a second page. And I say, you mean there's another one? And he says, yeah, but we bundled them all up and threw them away since we knew y'all were unhappy with the first page. And he said he even saw the trash truck come and get them. So he goes to bed. And Aunt Bee says it's good no one read the second page. Yeah, and I say, boy, you're not kidding. No telling what kind of gossip those boys might have picked up around town. So the three of us say good night to each other, and we split up. But then we all see each other later down at the dump, looking for that second page, saying we need to make sure they were burned properly. And we find them, but before we put them in the fire, we can't resist each reading a copy. The next day, Opie comes in the courthouse with a new revised edition of their paper. And I say, Opie, don't tell me you went and printed up another taper. But he says this one has nothing about grown-ups at all, just about his classmates, like his dad said they could. So we read some of those stories and we laugh about them. Well, I'm glad it turned out well. We'll see you next week for episode 27.